So I'm going to turn this over to Steve and AG2L in the hamlet of West Corners. And so Steve, if you want to go ahead and take it, we'll look forward to getting to all digital with you.
All right, sounds good. Well, before I get started with the presentation tonight, I wanted to take an opportunity. I have a 16-year-old that's standing here right next to me who some of you haven't seen since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. And when I saw that Ed N2BHD was on tonight, he's made mention a couple times that Aiden's been on the radio. So I'm going to take my camera here real quick. Come around here, and we're gonna point it over there, and
Wow.
there's Aiden. There's the little knee-high to a grasshopper kid that you guys all remember.
You've been feeding him, haven't you?
Yeah, just a little bit. He eats everything in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent.
$300 food budget per week.
Yeah, well, and with the price of milk and eggs these days, you bet. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, thank you for coming tonight. My name is Steve Olsen. I am the Director of Information Technology at Coughlin Gerhardt Law Offices, and I play radio. I was first licensed as a technician back in 2015, and then made my way up to the amateur extra class by 2017. This presentation tonight was born out of a radio conversation that I had with Jason, KD2UDR, who's also on the call tonight. He was having some issues getting his setup working with FT8, and apparently I did such a wonderful job helping him out that Ford shanghaied me into doing this presentation. So thanks for that, Ford. All right, let me get things set up here real quick. We're going to do some screen sharing. All right, everybody can see the screen? Yes, no?
Yep.
Yeah, well, you see your slide presentation on the right, and
Should be pretty much blank on the left here.
correct. That's what we're seeing.
Now,
Agreed.
let me just make one small modification. Take that down.
I'm glad you're doing this because I haven't made a contact yet. I can't figure it out. I got all the settings and everything are still in there. I'm looking at it right now, but I got no clue how to make a contact. So hopefully this will teach me.
All right. Well, I did that on purpose. I wanted the camera off of Zoom so that I could do the camera while I was doing the presentation. That way, you guys can actually see in the shack here. And here you can see my lovely FT710 along with my power meter and my LDG antenna tuner, which is an important piece of the puzzle for the purposes of SWR. So basically what we're going to do here tonight, guys, is the right-hand side of the screen is going to be the slides and the presentation, and the left-hand side of the screen is where we're going to do a lot of the work. And we're going to go through a basic introduction and configuration. I've actually stripped the software and the drivers out of my computer so that we can install them here together so you can actually see what that looks like. So FT8. What is FT8? Well, FT8 is a mode designed by Frankie and Taylor. It's an 8-frequency shift keying modulation, has a transmit and receive sequence length of about 15 seconds. The message length is 77 bits plus 14 bits of error correction, and it occupies a whopping 50 hertz of bandwidth. And that concludes the boring part of this presentation. What are the advantages of FT8? Well, it's really good at weak signal communication. Message decoding below -20 decibels is possible, up to 24 if you've got some of the settings set right. It works extremely well in high noise environments. And that's important because we all know that, as time goes on, the bands get filled up with more and more noise. So finding modes that we can use that will cut through that noise is important. It is a digital mode, has built-in error correction, okay? And one thing that digital modes can do that's very difficult to do in an analog mode is it can decode multiple signals at once. Takes up an extremely narrow bandwidth. A single signal only occupies 50 hertz of space. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you got a typical 3 kilohertz passband on your radio. You can have well over 40 QSOs going at the same time. So it's extremely bandwidth efficient. This lends itself really well to QRP operations. So what do we need to get started in FT8? Well, not a whole heck of a lot, believe it or not. You need an HF transceiver. And any remotely triggerable HF transceiver can be used. And what do I mean by remotely triggerable? It just means an HF transceiver that you can PTT from a computer. All right, you don't have to have all of the fancy stuff. I've seen people run an FT8 with some wicked old Heathkit equipment. They've managed to jerry-rig up a PTT circuit through a serial cable connected to their computer. And that's really all you need. Having that CAT control and a separate line level audio output and input is very helpful, but not completely necessary. And then obviously we've got a lot of these modern transceivers, especially in the Yaesu lineup, that come with built-in sound cards. They're one wire connection and they are the easiest. You need a personal computer. And here's the cool part. WSJT-X and JS8 Call, the two predominant FT8 software packages, they're available for Windows, Linux, and Mac. So you got your Mac guys out there, you can use it. You want to do a custom Linux installation, you can use it with that as well. Excuse me. Got to have some available USB ports. Not going to work on a modern transceiver with the one wire connection unless you got some USB ports. If you're using something that's a little bit on the older side that takes the serial cable, you got to have serial cable ports. Separate audio interface is helpful, but not necessary. Now, why is that? Well, if you're going to use the audio card or the sound card that comes with the computer, you're going to have a problem with their Windows noises coming through on the FT8 transmissions. So you got to do some extra work behind the scenes to make sure you're not getting your little email dings and whatnot else during your transmission cycles. So it is helpful, but not completely necessary. And then you need a software modem, an FT8 software modem. The two predominant ones, and we're going to go through both of these tonight, are WSJT-X and JS8 Call. And last but not least, accurate time. Now, a lot of people get hung up on this one. They think, oh my goodness, I got to have the time down to, stratum 2 time server down to the last millisecond. Well, that's just not true. The WSJT-X software has a tolerance of about 1/2 to 3/4 of a second. So you can be off from everybody else by about 1/2 to 3/4 of a second and still do fine. It's when you get beyond that 1/2 to 3/4 of a second that things start to go hairy. Most computers nowadays, if you got an internet connection and you've got a modern operating system like Windows 10 or Windows 11, it's already synced with the internet and you're not going to have a problem. If for some reason you're working offline, maybe you're doing a POTA or you're doing field day and you're not connected to the internet, well, in a pinch, you can dial up WWV on any one of its frequencies and just sync the time by hand. The key there is that if you decide to do this manually, you have to do it manually. You have to reset that and sync that each and every time you open up the FT8 software so that the time is accurate, because the clock in your computer will drift. Any questions so far?
Nope, we're
All
good.
right, cool. So the first one we're going to go through is WSJT-X. And the first thing we're going to do here, I'm going to move this over here and cover this up a little bit, is we're going to go ahead, actually, no, let me do this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get the drivers from Yaesu's website for this FT710. It's important that you go and get your transceivers drivers if you're using one of these modern transceivers that has the one-wire connection. So it's simple as, you know, Google your manufacturer, bring it on up. I got my 710 here. I'm going to go to it. I'm going to go to the Files tab, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and I'm going to find this FT710 USB virtual COM port driver. That's the one I want to get. So we're going to go ahead and download that. And let me cover me up here. All right, now we've got it downloaded. And a lot of times in order to save space, when these manufacturers package things, they'll package things as something called a zip archive. So when you get it, all you really need to do is right-click on the file and select Extract All. It'll come up with this nifty little window saying, hey, where do you want to put this? And it defaults to the same folder that you were just in, which is cool. That's what we're doing. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to extract these. And it just creates this folder, okay? We're going to go ahead and go into that folder. And you see we got a bunch of files. Now, I've done this once or twice, so I know which file to go through. There's a document here that would show you exactly how to do this and walk you through the steps just as I'm doing here. And we're looking for this SILABSER file. It looks like it's kind of like got a little gear icon right there. And it says setup information. That's the important key, okay? Now, it's important that you download and install the driver file, especially if this is the first time that you've hooked up your transceiver to your PC, before you plug in the USB port. If you plug in the USB port first, there's a chance that Windows is going to say, well, I think I know the device that you want, and it's going to install some generic driver that may or may not work properly. So it's really kind of important that we do this as a first step. So I'm going to find the setup information file. I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to select Install. And it's going to bring up a little security warning. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes. If I didn't, I wouldn't have done it.
Hey, Steve, can you make the computer part a little bit bigger? That's really kind of tiny for people to see.
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of limited as to what I can and cannot do. I'm on a really wide screen here. So when you're done with the installation of the driver, it's just going to say the operation was completed successfully. So we're good, okay? We've got the driver installed, so that's kind of step one. Step two is we're going to figure out all the little nifty devices that plugging the USB port in is going to give us. So I'm going to go into the search bar, and this is for Windows, and I'm going to type Device Manager. And I'm going to bring up my Device Manager before I plug it in. I'll try to make this bigger for you guys. And there's two sections to the Device Manager that I want to expand. Section one is the audio inputs and outputs. And section two is the COM ports. And once you've opened those up, you really need to take note as to what's already installed on your computer. Because when this goes and you connect the USB cord to it, it's going to use that driver file that we just put in there, and it's going to install all the pertinent things for the transceiver. And sometimes they come up with some really interesting names. And if you're not watching, you're not going to know what those are. So what I tell people to do is make a note, make an inventory of what you already see here, so that when we do the magic and we plug in the cable, you're going to be able to tell what's new. All right. And at this point, I am going to plug in my transceiver into an available USB port. And hopefully, you're going to see some things change. Awesome. So 4 devices showed up on the screen. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but under the port section, we had these 2 Silicon Labs bridge devices show up. And those are your COM ports that control your radio. And I want you to notice that one of these says enhanced and one of them says standard. By and large, for the most part, you can ignore the one that says standard. You are interested in the one that says enhanced. And you want to write down what that COM port number is. In my case, this came in at COM 5. The other 2 devices were in the audio section. We have a microphone, and it says 2-USB. That just means that because of the fact that I've done this a number of times, this is the second time this USB device has been installed. All right, but it's important to note that because that name will come in important later. And then speaker to USB, and you want to get those 2 that came in and write those down because those are going to be important later. All right. So theoretically, the transceiver is connected to the computer. Now let's go get some FT8 software. What do you say? So we're going to go out here to Google, and we're going to type WSJT-X. And we're going to bring up the WSJT-X homepage. And we're going to scroll down until we find some install files. So we're running Windows. And it gives us 2 options, either the 32-bit or the 64-bit. My computer is a 64-bit. Most computers nowadays, if you bought a computer in the last 3 to 5 years, it'll run 64-bit. So we're going to go ahead and grab that file. Your download will start shortly. Hopefully this won't take but a second. Yep, see we got the download starting. There we go, it's done. And there it is. And we're going to go ahead and run this sucker and install some FT8 software. And click next, agree. I don't ever add the path statement. This is a personal preference thing. If you want to, you can. It's going to ask you for a folder. Typically, you can just leave this as the default. However, I do things a little differently. I put all my amateur radio stuff in one folder. Choose a start menu. Yeah, you always want a start menu so you can find it later. And then it's going to go ahead and it's going to extract and install everything. You can see up here, installation is complete. Click next and we'll wind up with the finishing screen, and it will allow us to go ahead and run WSJT-X once we hit the finish button. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And poof, just like that, we've got WSJT-X. I'm going to move the camera section over here. Now we're going to get WSJT-X configured to run. So we're going to go ahead and actually, Technical difficulties. All right, so we're going to go to File, Settings. And typically what will happen here, apparently I didn't get everything out of the system, is once you open it up, it's going to come up with a wizard. And the wizard's going to ask you, what's your call sign? Because you got to plug that in. Yes, I know, rig failure. And it's going to ask you for your grid square, and it's going to give you an option to check some of these check boxes. And then it's going to drop you to the screen. So there's two things that we really need to do to get the radio set up with WSJT-X. We're going to go into the radio section. If your rig is listed, great. It just makes things a little bit easier. If not, you'll have to find one that approximates your radio. Like before they included the 710, I had to use the 991A. But now that they've updated the software, we can go with 710. And then you'll see this part down here where it says serial COM port. Well, remember that enhanced COM port 5 that we had earlier? That's what we're going to select here. We're going to make sure that we have the baud rate set. 38400 is what the 710 comes from the factory with. And then the rest of it, you can pretty much leave this as default. Over on the PTT side, because we're using the one wire kind of a deal, we can set the PTT method to cat. We have a radio that's capable of data and packet, so we're going to select that. And then for split operations, we're going to say, go ahead and fake it. Now, some of these may be different depending upon the radio that you're using. And I'll tell you, there's a plethora of stuff out on the internet that will show you everybody's done this to their radio at some point or another. There's somebody out there that has the information that can walk you through this. Once you get that all set up, the most important part was the serial port configuration, the COM5. We're going to test our cat. Lights green, we're clean. We're good to go. Next, we're going to test our PTT. It goes red. Radio goes into transmit. We're good to go. Now, obviously, I had the radio set to do 5 watts on, a channel here that's not really occupied, so we're good to go there. Now we're going to go under the audio section. And you remember those 2 audio devices that we had earlier? Now, here's where we're going to set those up. Here we got that microphone 2. Speakers 2, and then these 2 down here, these 2 settings down here, I like to use. Remember your power settings by band. I like to check them both. It just helps me out with this slider down here in the lower right-hand corner, and we'll get to that in a second. And that's it. That's pretty much all you need to do. The radio's set up. We're already starting to see signals come through. All right, you guys see the waterfall display in the upper left-hand corner?
Yep.
It changed frequency when he did that.
And
Yep.
poof, just like that, we're starting to get decodes.
Yeah, there's a couple of frequencies to choose from that are quote unquote
So
for it.
the frequencies are all pre-programmed into the WSJT-X software. If you go down here in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see where I'm clicking right here, there's a band button. You drop that down and you've got all your different bands in here with your preset frequencies. So if I wanted to go to 20 meters, I just picked the 20 meter band, and poof, just like that, you saw the radio over here change to 20 meters. And now we're going to start getting 20 meter decodes. I'm going to clear this out here real quick. Now, 9 chances out of 10, guys, that's what's going to happen with a modern transceiver. It's just going to install the driver, tell it the COM port, tell it the input and output on the audio device, and it's going to automatically start doing what it needs to do. Occasionally, you have to adjust the audio level. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So you want this receive audio in the lower left-hand corner. You want it to be between 30 and 70 dB. You don't want it to go much higher than 70, or the slider is going to turn red, basically saying the receive audio is too hot. And below 30, you might start missing decodes. So to adjust that, we're going to go into our control panel. So we'll go down to the search bar and we'll type control panel. And when it brings up the control panel, we're looking for one called sound. We'll bring up sound. And then because this is audio coming out of the radio and going into the computer, it's going to be on the recording side of things. It's kind of opposite to what you would think. And here we see that 2 USB audio device that we saw earlier. We're going to click on that. We're going to go to properties, and then we're going to go to levels. And as we change this slider, like I can see my receive audio is sitting right around 70. That's a little hot for my taste. So I'm going to back this slider down to maybe like 54, 55. And you see how that starts to slowly fall down. That average received audio starts to slowly fall down. So I'm going to get somewhere where I'm more comfortable, probably around 60. And we're going to call that good. And then we're just going to say okay to all of this, close this out. And away you go. You're receiving FT8.
Steve, can you turn up the audio so that they can hear what FT8 sounds like?
Oh, sure. You really want to hear it? It sounds awful.
Only for a little bit.
It's a bunch of screeching.
That's what it sounds like when you got 40 QSOs going on using frequency shift keying.
Yeah, we don't hear
We
it.
don't hear it.
You don't hear it at all?
No. Your mic probably thinks it's noise and it's cutting it.
Huh.
Well, go to either 7074, 14074, 21074.
You can't hear that coming through the monitor, even though my voice is.
Yeah. I wonder if your audio setting is like not set up for music or something. I don't know.
Because I'm blasting me and Aiden's ears right now with it.
Oh, there you can get it.
All right.
All right. Well, it sounds like a bunch of tones. It's nothing incredibly special.
Yeah, low pass filter is working.
But what's also neat about it is you'll hear it go for about 14 seconds and then there's a drop.
Correct.
About a second and then another 14 seconds.
Right. So remember earlier in the slide, what did I say? The transmit time, 15 seconds long. So it's actually, I think it's 13.5 seconds is the actual transmission time. And then the last second and a half is what it uses to do the decodes. So, all right. So now we've got the receive capabilities of this, of FT8 going on. We've got some decodes going on. On the left-hand side is kind of like a channel browser or a band activity where you've got everything in the passband is coming through. If you only wanted to see the folks calling CQ, there's a little checkbox down here. You can just check it and then do, I only want to see the CQs. That kind of cleans things up a little bit because you'll get everybody's back and forth through there. And now you'll see as it starts to go on, only the color-coded CQs are coming up. Over here on the right-hand side of the screen, we have where we are at, for an actual RX frequency. And up at the top, you can tell where your RX and TX is by this little green spot, this little green U, and then there's a red, we'll call it a red N. So the red N is your transmit, and your green U is your receive. And those correspond to the left and right mouse buttons at this point. So if I can click anywhere's in here and I can, with my left mouse button, and change where I'm receiving. And to that same extent, I can right click, if I have the settings set right, and set the transmit. There's a setting down here that says hold TX frequency. If you check this off, now you're in complete split mode. And you can actually split them up, which could be advantageous later on down the road. All right. Now let's do something with, let's get set up to transmit. So I'm going to tune up the radio for FT8 to transmit. So I'm going to come way up here in the passband where I'm not going to bother anybody. Set my transmit frequency way up there where there's no chance anybody's going to hear me. I'm going to make absolutely certain we're sitting at nothing but 5 watts. Yep. All right. And then we're going to hit this little tune button. When we hit this little tune button, we're going to put out a little carrier. And I want you to pay special note. Show you with this little thing. I want you to pay special note to this little meter. It's right now, it's set for automatic level control. And we're going to teach everybody the most misunderstood and the worst label in all of ham radio. And that is the power slider on the right-hand side of FT8. They really need to rename this. It has absolutely nothing to do with power, especially nothing to do with RF power. And that trips up a lot of folks, right? I think, in my personal opinion, it was more appropriately named as input audio drive, because that really represents what it does. You kind of think of this as your mic gain, right? So everybody's talked to somebody on the radio who's got a really hot mic, or they're gobbling the mic, and you know how distorted their audio gets when they do that. Well, if you set your power level, we'll call it, in WSJT-X too high, that's exactly what's going to happen at the other end. Those tones are going to get distorted, and you're going to splatter all over the passband, and you're not going to do yourself any favors, and you're probably going to tick off a few people at the same time. So we're going to adjust it so that that doesn't happen. So we're going to go ahead and hit tune. Radio goes into transmit. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to adjust this slider up until I see the ALC jump. See where that jumped? Now I'm going to back it back down until the needle just barely moves. Right there. That's where I want to be. I'm going to take off the tune and we're good to go. Now we've properly adjusted the input audio into the transceiver so that it's powerful enough to trip the RF circuits to put out the maximum amount of RF power, but it's not so high that it's going to distort the tones for FT8.
Hey, Steve,
Yeah.
it looks like you got an external display up there. Can you zoom in on that so they can see the ALC meter? It's very hard to find the ALC meter on the rig itself.
I can, but I kind of have to do it by hand, so.
Oh, okay.
He's gonna move it in.
Okay, there.
All right, so here's that. We'll do that again. We'll do the tune.
Yeah, you can see it now.
You see how the ALC goes down? If I move the power meter up, you see how the ALC jumps?
Yep.
Okay, you want that to just barely move. You want to tickle the meter. Now, this is an important concept to get down because, as I have found, depending upon where you are in the passband, and depending upon how long you've been running your radio, you may have to adjust that. That's something I constantly monitor on every transmission. And I'm constantly moving that meter a little bit here and a little bit there, just to make sure that I'm putting out a nice clean signal. All right, as far as the rest of the FT8 software is concerned, I'm not going to go too in depth and in detail. Let's try and do a QSO here if we can. Let's see if we've got. Let's clear this out real quick. Let's wait for the next round to come through. And we're going to bump the transmit power up to 35 watts. Wait for the next one to come through here. We got to pick this guy right here. Double click on him and enable TX. And just like that, we're transmitting. We're watching the ALC, I'm watching the SWR, and I'm watching the power. And just like
You're transmitting on top of him?
I'm sorry, what?
You're transmitting on his
The same frequency they use.
frequency.
Yes and no, because of the way this works. Oh, we got him. See, it comes up in red. We got him. The way it works, it's like an even odd thing. So he transmitted CQ, okay, and now I'm coming back on his off cycle and responding to him.
Gotcha.
But you happen to be on his same frequency as opposed to offset.
Correct. You can do it either way. This is running straight. There's another way in which you can run split, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So now the system pretty much takes over from this point on, right? It's got your standard messages. He came back, he threw out a CQ with his call and his grid square. I came back saying, hey, I hear you. Here's my grid square. So now we've exchanged call signs and we've exchanged locations. He gives a signal report for me. I give a signal report for him. I say 73s and we're done. And that's the entire QSO in FT8.
Steve, did your standard messages get generated automatically?
Yes, the standard messages get generated automatically when you double click on the person who is calling CQ.
Oh, okay. So they don't get generated until you do that.
Well, so.
Right, because you got to have the call sign. You can make some adjustments to that, but there's some really strict restrictions there. Like you can't just put any old thing you want in there. And we'll get to why in a second. But you'll see that this came up with this little window saying, hey, you've completed a QSO. Do you want to go ahead and log it? You can fill out some additional information here, whatever have you. We'll say, okay, poof, it's in the log. And we go on to the next one.
Where was that station? What's the call sign?
The call sign was November 5, India Foxtrot. And they were in Echo Mike 11. And I don't have the settings set up right now, but there's a way in here where you can set it to tell you what state they're in.
That's Texas. Gregory Clark and Eddie, Texas.
There you go. Texas on 35 watts on 20 meters after dark. There you go. So, like I said, kind of the purpose of this discussion was to kind of go over the basics and get your computer hooked up to the transceiver and get you going. There is so much here, guys. I very much encourage you to go and download the WSJT-X documentation and go through some of it, if not all of it. There's an incredible amount of things that you can do with this software. We talked a little bit earlier about running in split mode. If you uncheck the little hold TX frequency, now you can run in split mode. Now I can pick a completely different frequency to run on for transmit, which can be very important during the pileups. You stop and think about it. Somebody sends out a CQ, like say they're on a de-expedition, right? They're on some island that you've just been dying to get for years, right? And there's a bazillion guys calling back to him. Well, if you're running QRP or whatever have you, everybody's transmitting over the same 17-second cycle on his off cycle. You're never going to get heard that way. So what you can do is you can move your transmit frequency to something that's clearer. Like we can see in the waterfall here, we've got kind of a dark band up here. We can move our transmit frequency up there. Okay. And now when I sequence him and start having a QSO with him, I'm still transmitting on his off cycle, but I'm transmitting somewhere other than where he is. And because the software runs decodes across the entire passband, he's going to hear me because I'm coming back to his call. The software's programmed so that when it hears somebody coming back to his call, it's going to show up on the screen.
Steve, if you were to click hold TX frequency, would you stay on that same transmit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, when you click this, it holds the TX frequency. Now the two kind of get locked together.
Can you call more than one station at a time?
Not in. No.
Hmm.
No. Well, I should say, let me back that up. Not that I'm aware of.
Steve, there are some like schemes that let you reply to multiple stations at the same time through multiple streams, and that's
Yeah, there's kind of like I forget what they call it. There's a special mode that you can put WSJT-X into for contesting, in which it will save everybody who has responded to you and allow you to like queue them up.
Uh-huh.
All right, so that let's say you're at that, you're doing that that DX expedition on an island somewheres, and you get like 4 or 5 people who've done that same split operation, like what we were talking about, and your computer received 6 replies. Well, it's not going to just take in that mode, it will save all 6 of those replies, and it'll just sequence them out, do one at a time until it gets through all 6 of them. But that's a special mode. I haven't really played with that all that much because, quite frankly, I haven't gone to an island and done a de-expedition. Not saying I don't want to, just haven't done it yet.
let's go.
Yeah, right? All right, so move this back over here, and we're going to go back to our slideshow real quick, and we're just going to recap a little bit. So WSJT-X, standard message formats, predefined QSO structure, not really what you would call a conversational type of mode. You can use the split mode to get you heard and get you out of the muck. It's meant for very fast and efficient contacts. And this is kind of where it breeds into that. A lot of people think, oh, it's boring. You just sit there and watch it do its thing. And to a certain extent, they're right. But that is where the good part of WSJT-X comes in. It's really great for contesting and award collecting. In part because it works so well with it works so well in bad RF environments. All right. Also works well for and I put it underscore OTAs. You got the POTAs, the SOTAs, the IOTAs, you name it. I'll tell you a little quick story here about a guy who I was having a conversation with who does POTA, and he is a big sideband person, right? He knows how to do FT8, but he doesn't so much like it, right? He really likes doing sideband work, and that's where his heart is, and that's fine. And he's a real big POTA guy. And he goes out and he spends a bunch of time and money to prepare to do what they call a park rove, in which they go to multiple parks within a certain period of time and try to activate every single park that they go to. And this guy put a ton of time into making sure he had the right radio. He had, the antennas were all set the right way. He had, permission from the parks to do what he was going to do. The car was gassed up. Everything's ready to go. He goes out to the parks and he sets up and he's calling CQ on sideband and he's not getting anything. And he just doesn't understand why. And he's checking this and he's checking that and he's scratching his head. And just about the time he thinks that it's all for naught and he's going to go home and get nothing, he happens to go on QRZ and gets his first inclination of what's going on. He just happened to plan his POTA outing when there happened to be a solar flare. And the bands were pretty much dead. And so instead of going home, what does he do? He rips out his laptop, hooks up his transceiver, I think it was an FT8 to his laptop, throws up WSJT-X, and winds up completing the park rove using FT8 because of the fact that FT8 would still work even in the HF blackout due to the solar flare. So again,
that's the park number in FT8.
You don't have to.
you don't have to.
You do not have to do that in POTA.
Okay.
It doesn't, when you enter your log, when you submit your log, it'll put your park number.
So yeah, so it's just another tool for the toolbox, in my opinion. Okay. All right. Now we're going to talk about something called JS8 call. So we're going to close this down. And we're going to go and we're going to get some JS8 call stuff.
While you're doing that, we're talking about using this possibly for winter field day. Since FT8 is not eligible, JS8 call could be a digital mode that qualifies.
So yes, and let's make an interesting distinction there. So FT8 is the protocol, okay? But what they're disallowing is the use of something like WSJT-X, right? They don't want that structured QSO type of thing, right? JS8 call uses a form of FT8. All right, visit the download page. Yada, yada, yada. Here we've got our Windows, JS8 call. Sometimes, because ham software is done on the cheap, Windows likes to give you these nasty little warnings. And you see, I got one here. Are you sure you want to keep this? I wouldn't have downloaded it if I didn't want to. I'm actually going to go to a previously downloaded version of this. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to install it. Guess what, guys? The install process for this, almost exactly the same as it was for the previous software. Next, agree. No, I don't want to add it to the system path. Yes, I want to give it a different name because I'm Steve and that's what I do. Next. Yes, I want to start menu folder. Please install my software. Hey, look at that. And yes, I want to run it because why would I have installed it if I didn't want to run it? All right. So first thing you'll notice is it's similar to WSJT-X, right? Waterfall is just kind of in a different place. We're going to have to go through the same configuration process, though. Going to go into settings. We got to enter our call sign. We got to enter our grid square. There's some other stuff down here that you can fill out. You can put in information about your station, so on and so forth. We're going to go over to the radio section. Here, So this software runs a little bit behind the WSJT-X software because they actually take from the WSJT-X software to make JS8 call. And you'll notice in this list that the 710 has yet to be listed. Hence why I've set my rig to the FTDX 101D, because it's the closest approximation to the 710. All right. Under cat control, hey, guess what? We're going to use COM5 just like we did before. And we're going to basically mirror everything else. Baud weight, 38,400. We're going to leave all the defaults. And we're going to test cat. Light screen, we're clean. Under rig options, again, we're going to choose the PTT method as cat. Data and packet, faggot. I checked this checkbox here. This is one of those personal preference kind of deals. I like to hold the PTT between the frames. We'll talk about multi-frame transmissions in a second, but that just kind of saves the relay a little bit in my transceiver. Let's see, where are we? We are. Bring this up here a little bit. I am going to spin the dial just a wee bit. And we're going to back the power off to next to nothing. And we'll just real quickly make sure that the light will go red. Boop, it goes red, we're good. So we know it'll PTT. Now we're going to go to audio. Hey, look, it already picked up the microphone stuff. Now here's a really good thing to know. Because we already set the audio levels in WSJT-X, we probably won't have to fiddle with them too much in JS8 call because it's using the same device. And we'll say okay. Up here in the upper right-hand corner of JS8 call is where you enable all the different features. So obviously the first thing you want to enable is RX because you want to be able to receive. If you're not ready to transmit yet, you can have that as off and there's no possibility to transmit. Over here, we've got the ability to do the different heartbeat stuff, which we'll get into in a minute. Here's your tune button. Probably not going to have to play with that too much because we already did that in WSJT-X. So now basically what we do is we find ourselves some JS8 call frequencies and show you guys a little bit about how that works. So we're going to go over on to the left to the frequency part. We're going to click and we're going to pick 40 meters. Let's see what's going on 40 meters. Hey, look at that. We've got somebody right down here in the waterfall. Let's see if we get some decodes. We see our receive signal is on the left here, and we're right there in that sweet spot. We've still got the transmit slider on the right as well that we can mess with. Doesn't look like there's too much going on here, does there? All right. Well, let's see if we can wake up the locals. Throw up our power, do about 35 watts. And I am going to send out a heartbeat. And what that's going to do is in this special little yellow set. Oh, here it goes. Here's some heartbeats already. It didn't even hit the transmit button. In the special little yellow section is where the heartbeats go out. And basically what the heartbeats are is they're transmitted signals that say, here I am, and can you hear me? And then you can pick whether or not your station automatically responds to say, yes, I hear you. And what that'll do is that'll populate the right-hand side of the screen. Yeah, I kind of figured that was going to happen. Let's turn off automatic acknowledgements here. There we go. It's gonna populate the right-hand side of the screen. The right-hand side of the screen are all the stations that I can hear. If I turn on the heartbeat with the automatic acknowledgements, and I send out a heartbeat and they send out an acknowledgement, what'll happen is the station will get an asterisk next to it. What the asterisk signifies is not only can I hear them, but they can hear me. Okay? And what we can do with this is we can double click on one of those stations to start a directed call, or we can call CQ by typing, by putting in the all call and typing CQ down in this, this box down here. Or we can hit the little button over here that says CQ. And that'll transmit a CQ and somebody will come back to us and away we go. What's interesting about JS8 call is it's more of a conversational type of mode. Instead of the structured query, we can type out one big long message here in the box. And what it'll do is it'll split that message up into individual 17 second segments and transmit them out as FT8. Now, obviously, if you do, you know, half a book, it's going to take you 20 minutes to transmit the whole thing. But the point is that you can actually hold on a full tilt conversation with somebody over this using FT8 and taking advantage of all the low signal capabilities of FT8 through this. I point this out, you know, because I know a lot of folks don't like the structured way in which WSJT-X works. So here's a good alternative. It's not very well known. I've played with it a little bit, and I find that there are times where I like using this better. A couple of other features that are available in JS8 call that you won't find in WSJT-X. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the heartbeat networking. You can set this up, guys, so that it's almost completely automated. Like you can set it so that I right click on this heartbeat thing and I can set a timer so it will send out a heartbeat signal at specific intervals. So it'll constantly update this list on the right. And I can also change how folks expire on this list. Like I can say, you know, I only want to see people who I've been in contact with for the last 5 minutes. If I haven't exchanged a heartbeat with you in the last 5 minutes, drop from the list, kind of a thing. Same thing with the messages on the left. Okay. Mailboxing capabilities. This is kind of a cool thing. I can send, if somebody has an automated station set up, I can send them a message that they receive later. Along those same lines, and this, I've done this once, and it was really neat, is we can do message relay, which means, let's say I can hear person A, but I can't hear person B, and I want to get a message to person B. However, person A can hear him. I can send him an FT8 message through that person. There's also telemetry data that you can put through JS8 call. You can do something called HF APRS reporting, which some of the e-com guys are looking at different ways in which they can kind of leverage that. There's also the ability, there used to be the ability to do text messaging. However, I think at the beginning of last year, the SMS GTE gateway was shut down because they did some new laws or some crazy thing, and that's no longer a thing. However, they're looking at ways in which they can get that back up and running. So there might be in the future a way that you can actually send a text message to your cell phone through something like a JS8 call. I know we've kind of gone wild and willy here in the presentation. I've tried to be mindful not to make this go on for a long time. I know you guys like to try and get out of there at 9 o'clock. So it's been kind of a high level overview, and I apologize for not being able to get into some of the nitty gritty. but I did have quite a bit of information that I wanted to cover. So just want to go over some final thoughts with you guys. Don't use high RF power when using FT8. It's just not necessary. 40 watts or less is best. And that's really for two reasons. You're going to be considerate to your fellow ham. Just because you got 200 watts that you can throw out and the duty cycle to support it doesn't mean you should. Your signal is going to be so loud that the person 4 states away isn't going to hear anything in the passband because your signal's so big and bad. And you'll find that the folks who use FT8 will figure out who you are and they just will stop responding to you. The other side of the coin is this is a digital mode, right? So you have to be wary of the duty cycle of your transceiver. Most modern transceivers will tell you that full key down carrier, your duty cycle should be 50% or less. The highest I run on digital is 35 watts because I don't need any more. Could I run it up to 40 and be safe with the 710? Probably, but why? I don't need to. The other thing is try to transmit a clean signal. Watch your ALC. Like I said, it's not a static thing. You got to adjust that, quote, power slider, right? Sometimes when you change bands, sometimes when you're in the band. I've even adjusted it mid-transmit cycle because I saw it either going high or not, moving at all. Having that overmodulated audio going into the transceiver, it's just going to hurt yourself and it's going to hurt others. I've seen some splatter signals in my day, and let me tell you, it really makes for a bad day using FT8. And then finally, check for routine updates to the software. They're constantly doing bug fixes and improving the stability of this stuff. And new features get added all the time. That split mode operation, a couple years ago, that wasn't even possible within the FT8 software, within the WSJT-X. They've added that recently. They've added a bunch of other stuff to it as well. So always keep a close eye on that. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. Anybody got any questions?
Well, it looks like
Anybody on the live stream?
it looks like it runs itself, but you have to be there, right?
Yes, you should be there. Well, you've got to select the person that you're going to use that you're going to do the QSO with. So for sure.
Okay.
And Ed, what do rules say? Rules say you got to be able to kill a stuck transmitter, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you have canned messages in JSA call?
Yes, you can. Yep, you can program your own messages in JSA call. You can program your own messages in WSJT-X. You're just very, very limited as to the number of characters and what kind of characters you can put in there. And to be quite honest with you, if everybody else is following a set sequence and you change and do something different, you're just not going to get the responses that you're looking for.
Is there a lot of parks on the air activity with this?
Yeah. There's actually there's a call sign, and I'm reminded of it all the time because his call is very, very close to Steve Martell's call. It's K7CAR, and I see him on FT8 all the time. He's like out in Oklahoma or out Midwest somewheres.
Utah.
Yeah,
He's in Utah.
he's in
Yeah,
Utah.
I see him on there constantly on WSJT-X doing the POTA thing.
Yeah, you check his QRZ page and it shows his camper out in the middle of nowhere. That's the thing.
How do you know station's doing POTA on WSJT-X?
They'll either spotted,
It'll say POTA on it.
they'll call CQ POTA, or they'll be spotted on the POTA app
Okay.
as the mode they're operating in.
Like just right now, there's at least 6 people using FT8 because they're spotted on the photo website.
Yeah.
Maybe it's guaranteed you more than that, but at least.
Yeah, and I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's because of the spotting app through the POTA website that you can get away with not knowing the part number. Isn't that right?
Yeah, because when you submit your log, the activator submits a log, and that triggers the hunter to get credit.
Right.
I think, can't you with FT8, actually in the CQ, you can actually say POTA.
You can call CQ.
Yeah, you've got enough room. So you've got enough room in the character set, and I think it will allow you to actually put POTA in there. I've seen others too. I've seen
I've done
I've seen
Yeah.
islands on the air. I've seen youth on the air. I've seen volunteers on the air.
I've seen people asking for certain states.
Yep.
The training
Yes.
like work in all states.
There's
Yeah.
a lot, WWA, for the month of January
Yeah.
that are on the air.
All right, well, in the absence of any other questions, I mean, AG2L is on our member of the club here, so if you want, you can reach out to get to Steve via his QRZ page.
Yes, sir.
If you don't mind.
This is a great introduction. Walk us through all the way through, starting from zero to configuring, what you have to look for to configure. You can, again, this Zoom will be actually on our YouTube channel. So you can actually go back and listen to it, stop it, go find out, make your adjustments, and then continue on. So this has been really, really helpful, Steve. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Yeah, and if anybody's got, thank you. Thank
All
you.
right. So thank you all as well, those who are watching online, and we'll see some of you next month. I personally won't be here, but we will have a meeting here.
You were recording this, I hope.
Yeah, I'm recording it, and I'll stop it. And
Excellent.
and Ed, I'll let you know when it's up on YouTube.
Sounds good.
All right, take care.
Thanks, guys. Winter field day.
Thank you all.
Look at that. It took us right to 9 o'clock. Perfect timing.
Thank you very much, Steve.